Now, the Prime Minister, as we've been reporting, is hopeful of the government's tougher immigration laws passing when Parliament resumes next week. Joining us with more is the Shadow Immigration Minister Dan Tehan. Appreciate your time. A Senate inquiry yesterday recommended the Parliament pass a bill that would grant the government powers to jail non-citizens resisting deportation and also block visa applications from specific countries. Is that a move the Coalition supports and will vote for in Parliament next week?
Well, we've said that we support the intent of the bill, but our senators have been very, very active as part of a Senate inquiry. We've put forward 17 recommendations that we think would improve the bill. So we'll now be looking at those internally and then seeking to have discussions to see whether what I think are very sensible recommendations can be incorporated into the bill. As I've said, we support the intent of it, but the way that the government rushed it, the way that the government didn't take into account unintended consequences, for instance, that it could lead to boats starting up again, has been borne out by the recommendations we've seen from the Coalition senators, from the inquiry itself, from the head of the Australian Border Force. So we're now looking at all the recommendations from the Coalition senators' reports, and we'll have more to say in the coming days.
17 recommendations is a lot, but as you say, you broadly agree with the intent here. And as the government is saying, this does come down to that intent in terms of, does the Coalition believe the government should have more powers to remove individuals who have no right to stay in Australia? Your answer seems to be yes. So in that case, will you help the government secure those powers, even if you don't get any amendments that you're putting forward through?
Well, obviously we've got to go through our internal processes and we'll be doing that over the next few days. We also haven't had a clear message yet from the government as to when they are going to reintroduce the bill back into the Senate. As a matter of fact, we haven't heard from Andrew Giles really in the last 5 weeks on anything at all, apart from one late afternoon radio interview he did. So what we really want to see is, OK, when is the government going to reintroduce the bill? We'll then hopefully be in a position to state, well, this is how we think the bill could be improved, because as you'll remember, the government tried to rush this through the Parliament. The government didn't even want to do a press conference on the bill. Eventually they were forced to, and that was that press conference where Claire O'Neill and Andrew Giles ended up running away from reporters once the questions got a little bit too hard. So
Dan Tehan, is there a deal breaker though? You want to get this done, but in terms of the Coalition demands here, whether it be extra safeguards, sunset clauses on declarations, reinstating TPVs, are you willing and is it reasonable for you to go into these negotiations flagging which ones are a priority for you in terms of needing to get a certain amendment through in order to get your support?
Well, as I've said, we have to go through our own internal processes. What we've seen from the Coalition senators...
So as the Shadow Minister, though, nothing stands out for you in terms of being something you need to change in order for this to go through and give the government those extra powers?
Well, the way the process works is that I will take recommendations to my shadow cabinet members. I will then take those recommendations to the party room and we'll have internal discussions around that. One of the things that we want to do when it comes to immigration, when it comes to border security, is take considered approach to make sure that we're dotting I's, crossing T's. We don't want to see unintended consequences. We will not follow the government's approach to immigration and border security, which is chaotic, botched, hopeless, hapless, you name the adjective, that you can pretty much apply it to the government. And so we do not want to, take that process. We want to make sure when it comes to keeping the Australian community safe that we do it in a proper and methodical way. So I will take some recommendations to the Shadow Cabinet. I'll take them to the party room, and then we will obviously have discussions with the government about that. But we don't even know, and we haven't heard from Andrew Giles, as to whether the bill will be put back into the Senate next week. As a matter of fact, if you can find Andrew Giles, you'll be doing the Australian people a big, big favour, because no one's seen him for about 5 or 6 weeks.
Well, it certainly sounds like that is the government's intention. Sounds like we'll have to watch that space in terms of what position the coalition ends up landing on when it comes to putting forward some of those amendments. Finally, I did want to ask you, Dan Tehan, we saw a previous story here on Sky News about the intervention from your former colleague Josh Frydenberg on the rise of anti-Semitism in this country. Is that chant from the river to the sea, is that open to interpretation in your view?
No, it's not. It's very clear in what it means, and it means that people are chanting that they want to see Israel eliminated. And that has no place in the Australian community, and it's something which should be condemned and should have been condemned by the Prime Minister from the very start. We're seeing the breakdown of social cohesion in this nation, and such chants are adding to the breakdown of that social cohesion. Now, the Prime Minister has finally come out and said that he condemns it, but what we now need to hear is from the rest of the Labor Party members, them say exactly the same thing. Jason Clare now needs to come out and say that his interpretation was wrong, and he backs the Prime Minister 100%. We need to hear that from Tony Burke, and we need to hear that from other members of the ALP. And once we start hearing that type of leadership from the government, I think the Australian people will start to feel a lot more rest assured, because at the moment they don't think they're getting the leadership that they need to make sure that social cohesion remains fundamental to our community. It's something we've always prided ourselves on, and we're seeing a breakdown in that social cohesion. We're seeing it at universities, we're seeing it in these protest marches, and we need to see an end of it, because I don't think it's something the Australian people want. They love multiculturalism. If people come from around the world to this country and leave behind the intolerance that they've come from that we see in those countries, and we're the greatest country on earth to live. We've got to make sure we keep it that way.